men. And I use the term in a manly way today because you guys, if you're here watching us, have obviously returned for part 4 of the K Chronicles project. In one of the earlier videos, I told you that I would verify the stroke of these flywheels just to make sure everything is what it appears to be. So we got a K wheel, a KHK wheel over here, and I got an XL wheel over here. And first off, you should be able to notice that the crank pin hole is much closer to the edge of the flywheel on the K, on the KH than it is on the XL. So that's a good sign. But let's do a couple of measurements and see what the stroke is. And you know, the stroke is the diameter formed by the circle created from the rotation of the crank pin. So, you know, we got a center over here. You can't put your finger on it. It's kind of imaginary, but this hole has got a center. And when it rotates around over here, it's, you know, forming a circle, and the diameter from here to here is the stroke. So this is kind of an abstract point, you know, abstract points at this time. So how do we calculate that? Well, here's one way to do it, and I'm sure there's others. Let's just measure from the outside of the pinion shaft to the outside of the crank pin hole. And these numbers are going to be close. They're not going to be exact, but they'll be pretty close. I come up with a number 3.330. So let's measure the pinion shaft. The pinion shaft is pretty much exactly 1 inch. So we're going to take the diameter 1 inch, we're going to divide it by 2 to get the radius, so that's a ½ inch, 0.500. So let's take the diameter of the crank pin hole. That is pretty much exactly 1.1. So the radius is 0.550. So let's subtract these numbers from 3.330, and that will give us the distance from the center of the pinion shaft to the center of the crank pin hole. Okay, I've done that calculation. I've come up with 2.28. Multiply that times 2, and that should be the diameter of the circle formed by the rotation of the crank pin, and that will therefore be the stroke. Let's see if it comes out right. I come up with 4.56. And I'm looking at my notes on this project, and the KHK stroke is 4.56. This is a real KHK flywheel. It's authentic. So all the bits and pieces of this motor line up with it being a real KHK, not something cobbled together out of parts and hacked together. The VIN number, the diameter of the flywheels, those kinds of things. So this is good to go. This owner is going to be very happy to know this is seemingly all original stuff. Let's take a closer look at one of these cylinders. K model cylinders typically have a notch cut out on the front and the back of the cylinder skirt, which is clearance for the connecting rod as the engine is rotating. What is not typical is this scalloped area in here. This looks factory to me, and it just goes to show you how close the connecting rod gets to the side of the cylinder on a motor with a large stroke like this. So this is clearance. It looks factory to me. These scallops I've never seen before, but like I say, they do look factory. And to me, this is just further proof that what you have here must be original K model stuff, KHK model stuff rather. One other note, there's a passageway on the crankcase with pressure oil in it that lines up with this hole over here. And there is a little tiny hole right here that lubricates the piston skirt when the engine is running. Not much of a hole. And I'm looking at this thing, and a lot of the scratches are in line with that oil hole, which makes me wonder whether or not there wasn't crud in there when this motor got started up the first time. But anyway, oil passageway, both cylinders have it. Couple of things to note on KHK cylinders. Let's talk a little bit about this head too. This is the front head. I mentioned it just briefly when I popped it off of the engine. Big crack. Looks like it might start at this bolt hole, runs across, comes out the other side of the spark plug hole. Looks like maybe it ends about here. Hard to tell. The engine will run with that cracked. It ain't going to hurt it. You know, due to the way the fins are constructed and all, I can't tell whether it comes all the way through. It doesn't look like it. I don't know. I might get in there with the Dremel tool and dig some of this out of there and try to get some weld in there. I don't know what I'm going to do. I may just leave it. I think the engine will run. I mean, this bike is not going to be ridden hard or much. I may just leave it. The other area of concern is all of this here. I'm not sure whether this is corrosion or whether, you know, a valve didn't break or a spark plug didn't break or something to pound the head like this and put all these little gouges and dents in it. I think they're actually little dents and little gouges from something hitting inside there. Hell, it could have been a rock. You know, it could have been a rock, could have been a piece of shit got sucked in. I don't know. But anyway, other damage on the head. This I'm not real worried about. You know, I'm going to put the motor together. These heads, without having to deal with the valve train, I mean, these things come off and on in, you know, 5 minutes. If the owner were to find a head 2 years from now and bolt it on, like I say, this will run with the crack in it, probably run just fine for as little beating on it as he is going to do. You know, if he finds another head 3 years from now or whenever and pops it on there, you know, this will be fine for a while on there. I'm not particularly worried about it. You know, it's the kind of thing where if I try to fix it, I could probably do more harm than good. So I don't know what, if anything, I'm going to do about that. I may just leave it alone. Okay, these are, of course, the Tapa bodies. You guys who work iron heads notice that these are considerably different than Sportster Tapa blocks. They're very similar to 45 flathead Tapa blocks. I did mark them when I took them out. This is a rear exhaust. These feel pretty good. They're nice and smooth. The sides of the lifters aren't chewed up. One thing I am marginally concerned about, and I don't know, once again, I don't know right now what I'm going to do with it, but the rollers seemingly have all been replaced. And the rollers, there you go. And I know you can't see it on camera, but made in Japan. I doubt seriously if in 1955 Harley was buying Tapa rollers from a Japanese source. Actually, Japanese bearings and stuff are usually of very high quality, and I'm not scared of using them. What I am scared of is on all four of these, the axle is loose. So, you know, I don't know whether that could be tightened up. I don't know whether it's worth trying to tighten up. I don't know what kind of shape the axle is in. But obviously somebody's been in here before and somebody has changed the rollers and the axles. So something to be aware of. Like I say, I just don't know at this point what I'm going to do with it. I may just leave it. I don't think they could come out. but I'll take a closer look at them when the time gets closer. Okay, rear motor mount. This one's been welded on over here. Virtually every one of these I've ever seen, like 9 out of 10 of them, are cracked. I thought the early Sportsters and the Ks had a forged steel or cast iron motor mount, and that these aluminum ones came later. So I'm not sure this is original. You know what? And this did come later, because it's got a 1958 casting number on it. So this is not original to the 55. And the weld job on here is not particularly good. It either cracked again or they didn't get all the crack. There's more crack showing through the bottom over here. So that could be, of course, easily re-welded, unless the owner wants to get himself a new one from somewhere, or search for a used one that hasn't been broken, or preferably see if he could source out a steel one or a cast iron one. That would be much better. A little more follow-up on these crankcases. The pinion bearing race is different on this KHK than it is on Sportsters. It's got a snap ring around here. These Sportster ones you've seen them, they have the 2 set screws that go in from the top and the bottom. So this bearing race is different. See these little shiny marks right here and right here? The flywheels were hitting the side of the case. So I'm going to have to take a careful look at it when I put it back together again, and you know, try to address that, figure out why it was hitting, and whatever was causing a problem, fix it. Like I said earlier, I think in an earlier part of the video, or one of the videos, that both of the drain plug holes have been welded shut. I think I'm going to leave them welded shut. This one, you know, these are both prone to getting stripped, and this one tends to crack between the edge of the case and the hole, so I may just leave that. The guy who welded them did not weld the inside. I usually weld the inside too. I may weld over the inside just to make sure they don't leak. The other thing I noticed is all the damages on these cases had black magic markers circling them. And there was, in fact, a black magic marker circling this. I pressure washed this thing and shot it with some degreaser so the black markers come off. And back here, let me get you close into that counter shaft area. This counter shaft area, you could just see the remnants of the black magic marker around here. So whoever put it together knew it was damaged, identified the damage, and then just put it together anyway. I suspect that, you know, he probably thought he was in a little over his head with trying to fix something like this, and indeed he probably was. So I think he just kind of slapped it together to keep all the pieces from getting lost and figured he'd sell it. But anyway, he knew this was damaged, put it together again anyway. Black magic marker around here, there was black magic marker around this. So, you know, he did address the stripped out bowl holes. And let's look at one other feature of this KHK case. Notice this step. Once again, this is for connecting rod clearance. You only need this on engines with long strokes. I've never seen that from the factory on any other cases. I've seen it done on cases that were modified for strokers, but this looks like factory work. I mean, you can see the casting marks in it. It looks like it was cast this way. This one here has chowder marks on it. And usually chowder marks are caused by something letting loose and banging around in there. Somewhere along the line, this engine suffered a failure that had broken pieces banging around in here. hence the chowder marks over there. Luckily, it managed not to poke a hole in anything. Here is the left side case, and once again the black magic marker, and there's a crack, very tight crack, very hard to see down and through here. So once again he found the damage, noted it, and then proceeded to do nothing about it. I've seen a number of cases with this. You know, it's possible that this occurred when the engine was manufactured. You got a steel insert in here that's cast into the case, and it may very well be that when the aluminum was poured around it to create the casting and it cooled off and it shrunk, this crack might have been created when it was new. I don't know. I'm not going to weld it. I'm going to put a steel reinforcement ring. I'm going to shrink around here to help pinch it all together. You got some Healy coils in here. Healy coils that were poorly installed. The Healy coil is hanging out on this side. I'm going to trim that back. Hanging out over here. You don't want these coils hanging out in the breeze. You got more black magic marker around here, and indeed there is a crack in through here. These crack all the time, not a big deal to fix. We'll gouge it out with the Dremel tool, try to get all the way to the bottom, and then fill it back in. Not a particularly big deal. Once again, found damage, noted the damage, and then ignored it. Got a little bit of a chowdered up weld in here. May redress that a little bit.